What's good, YouTube? Welcome to another trading video. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create a supply and demand zone. I know you watch a couple of videos out there on YouTube confusing you how to draw a supply and demand zone. Trust me, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. You're just getting confused. But I'm going to show you my way, the easy way, how to draw a supply and demand zone. Let's get to the charts.
And move back to the trading view screen. All right, so demand zone and supply zone. Demand zone works on the uptrend. Supply zone works for the downtrend. Demand is buyers, supply is sellers. To make it easy. I ain't trying to be complicated. But what demand purpose is, what supply purpose is, I'm gonna make it like ABC 1, 2, 3. Demand is buy, supply is sell. S, sell, supply, sell. S, sell, supply, sell. Demand, buy. All right. Now we got that out the way. Demand now, I'm focused on demand. Demand works for uptrend. You're going up to buy. All right. You're going up to buy. That's a demand zone. So let me draw a demand zone. Higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. All right. This is an uptrend. So now to draw your demand, you need to wait for a break of structure, right? You need to wait for a break of structure to draw a demand zone. All right. That's the only way it's going to work. You need to draw a break of structure. No, you need to wait for a break of structure for the demand zone to work. You know what I'm saying? You need to wait for a break of structure. The first rule is to find a trend. Find the trend. Once you find the trend, wait for the break of structure on that trend, which is right here. This is the break of structure. Price need to go past this structure and break it. Then you form your demand zone, which would be right here. It will be right here, right? When price break its structure, you wait for your demand zone. Price gonna pull back into demand and take off. This is your money shot. This is your money shot right here, right? This is your money shot. You wait for the break of structure. You wait for the pullback. Price coming back to get you. Like my coach said, my coach says, this is your bus stop. Draw your bus stop. The price is gonna come back and pick you up at your bus stop and take off. Y'all get the bag. Y'all go get the money. This is the money trail. All right. Simple. Then when price break this structure now, you could draw another demand zone. Pull back, come back, hit this demand zone and go back. Then this is where you trail your stops. That's more advanced. This is the basics. All right. You wait for the pullback, wait for the car come pick you out your bus stop, and bam, get money. As simple as that. But before you draw your demand zone or any zone, you need to wait for the break of structure, fam. You need to wait for the break of structure. You don't draw a demand zone higher low. No, higher low, higher high, higher low. In this is not a break of structure. All right. This is not a break of this price didn't break this structure, so you don't draw no demand zone. Price is going to the downside. You understand? Price is going to the downside because they broke from the downside break of structure. You need price to break this break of structure right here. This is what I do in the live charts. I draw a line, a break of structure line. I wait for price to break this structure. If price do not break this structure, I draw no demand zone, period. I draw no demand zone. This telling me price is going down to the downside. All right, this is the break of structure right here. Price break the structure. Then you draw your supply zone, right? That's next. We'll talk about that next. But you need to wait for the break of structure to create your demand zone. If price do not break your break of structure, you do not draw your demand zone. Period. Period. All right. Now let's draw supply zone. It's that totally opposite, but the same thing, fam. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Now let's go for supply. Low. Oh, my fault. I grabbed the wrong tool. My fault. Oh, I grabbed this marker. Low. Lower high, lower high, lower high, and lower low, right? Now, price broke structure to the downside. You understand me? Price breaks structure to the downside. You do not mark your supply zone until price break structure to the downside. Price break structure. Boom, to the downside. This is my break of structure line. Price broke structure, so now I could draw my supply zone from right here. This is a good example right now. Since price didn't come up and hit my supply zone, I don't do nothing. I wait for the next break of structure, which is right here. Price broke the next break of structure to the downside. Now I'll draw my supply zone again. This time, this zone might be a little wide. Boom. Now, since price came back and hit my supply zone, then I take entry, going back to the downside. That is all, fam. That is it. That's all. That's supply and demand in a nutshell. You wait for the break of structure, draw your supply zone, wait for tap. Price tap your zone, you take entry. 4 steps. 4 steps. 4 steps, fam. 4 steps. That is it. Let me see if I can write this down real quick. 4 steps. Number 1. Find the trend. Number 2. Wait for the break of structure. Number 3. You mark your zone and wait for tap. Number 3. I'm for number 3. Number 4. Take entry. Oops. You take your entry. That is all, fam. That's it. That is all. That is all. 4 simple steps. Wait for the trend. Supply. Wait for the break of structure. We have the break of structure. Mark zone and wait for tap. We marked our zone and we wait for the tap. The market came, price came and tap. Take your entry. You take your entry. All right, you take your entry. Grab your short tool. Usually I come aggressive slash conservative, right? Why it always does that, right? Let me fix this up real quick, man. Trading view be acting crazy. All right. Move my stop a little bit up here. This is where my entry be at. And I go for 101s. I go for the 101. Move it right here. So you can see perfect. Boom. There you go. Take entry. Bam. Clean shot. You want to go for 1 or 2? Fine. You go for your 1 or 2. That's that in a nutshell. Move myself to number 2 or whatever. It's close enough. 1 or 2. This is it. Simple. Wait for trend. Going down to the downside. Wait for the break of structure. It broke structure. Broke structure. After the break of structure, you mark your zone. Mark your zone. Wait for it and wait for the tap. Since price came back and tapped his zone, the last thing you need to do is take entry. All right. You take your entry. I should make a separate videos by entry because I want to make this video too long. You understand me? There's aggressive, conservative, and break of the candle. Me, I do aggressive slash conservative. I do both at the same time to make sense. You know what I'm saying? I wait for the candle to tap. I wait for the next candle to come back out the zone. Then I take entry. Once the opening candle come out past the zone, I take entry. I take entry. I don't wait for a break of the candle. Soon price come out the zone, going to the downside, I take entry. That's how I do it. All right. So now let's get to the candles. You find the trend. The trend is going down, right? I'll make this simple, right? You don't mark the demand zone yet because price did not break structure right here. This is the break of structure. All right, matter of fact, let's wait. Let's do it like this. All right, let's do it like this. It's 9 o'clock in the morning, New York session, right? It's New York session, 9 o'clock. The 1 hour, the high time frame is telling you bullish, right? But you see a downtrend. So before you do anything in opening bell, when 9:30 hit, when the volume hit, you don't do nothing. What I do, I get on the charts. Let's say the 4 hour and the 1 hour telling me bullish. So we go and look for demand, right? What I do, I grab this tool. I say, okay, if price is going up, I want to see price break this structure. I grab my little marker tool. I want to see price break this structure to prove to me it's going up to the upside, right? And I want to draw this or break the structures too. These are my breaks or structure lines, okay? I'm waiting for this to get hit, right? I don't draw no demand zone. All right, so one is gone. The 1 hour and the 4 hour, they're just an example. The 4 hour and the 1 hour is telling me bullish. We going for buys. So to prove the market right, I want to see these 3 breaker structures get hit. This is the minor breaker structures. All right, this is minor breaker structures. I want to see the minor breaker structures get hit. I don't draw no demand zone yet until price tell me it's gonna break structure. Boom, it broke structure. There you go. Price broke structure. So I could take this and delete this. Gone. It broke structure. Now what you do? You create your mark your zone and wait for the tap. You found the trend. Price break structure. You could cross these 2 out now. So you mark your zone. You mark your zone and wait for the tap. Right? Now I sit, I do nothing. I wait the price come back and tap. Wait for the pullback and the money shot. Pullback, money shot. You wait for the pullback and the money shot. This is to get money. This is to get money. All right. pullback, money shot. That's what you're waiting for. The pullback and the money shot. All right. Let's wait for it. All right, it ain't pulled back yet. Price still going up. Okay, price look like it's pulled back a little bit. Boom, price break structure again. You could use a wick or the body of the candle as the breaker structure. Me, I prefer to see the body of the candle break the structure for a strong confirmation. A wick is fine. This is considered a breaker structure. But for me, I go for a body. A body is stronger to me than a wick. You know what I'm saying? My opinion. All right, but it did break structure. Right? It definitely did. You pull it back again. Now, I could take this off. I could draw another demand zone because price broke this structure right here. Price broke structure. So now I could draw another demand zone. How about drawing? All right. I drew another demand zone. Now I need to wait now to price come back, tap the structure, and get the money shot. That's an uptrend. Higher low, higher high, higher low to pull back, and higher high. We get money on the high, next higher high forming. That's the money shot. All right. That's what we're going to rate for. Boom, we got a tap. Now, since we got a tap on the zone, cross off number 3. Now we take entry. The last step, we take entry. We take our entry. Right? We take our entry. I set up my long tool. I put my stop over the entire zone. And I go for a 101. Maybe sometimes a 105. All right. My stop loss is over the zone because if price come and violate the entire zone, that means my whole bias is done. You know what I'm saying? The zone is violated, invalidated. All right. The zone is invalidated. That means my whole trade idea is thrown in the trash. Because price done violated the zone. All right. Now, I usually wait for price to come up. The next candle come up. The next candle come up. Once the next candle come up, peak up in here, I'm taking entry. That's why I call it /aggressive/conservative. I'm not taking entry inside the zone. I'm taking once price come up and tap, boom, I'm in. Soon I seen that green candle get inside this green area, I'm in. I am in. I'm in the trade, right? I'm in the trade. Now let's move forward. Boom, 101, quick 101. You could have went for 1 or 2 if you want to. Could have went for 1 or 2. That's the money shot. That's the get money shot. All right. Simple. That's demand and supply in a nutshell. Easy. You wait for the breaker structure. It broke structure. Mark your zone. It broke the next structure right here. It broke the next structure. You mark your next zone. Wait for price. Tap your zone. Take entry and bang. That's it. This will work 75% of the time. The other time, price is going to go the other way and just invalidate your zone and hit your stop loss. It's the market. It happens. You're going to lose. But supply and demand is a good strategy if it's good for your personality. I love this. I love the strategy because it fit me. All right. This how you mark your demand zones. That's how you take entry. You follow these setups. Follow the trend. You found your trend now. Wait for the break of structure. Price broke structure. Wait for the tap. It broke structure again. You mark your zone again. Then you wait for the tap. You wait for the tap. Then you fourth. Take your entry. And boom. That is all. That is all. You know what I'm saying? That's all. Let me show you a supply setup. Price break your structure and you mark your zone. You mark your zone. Price tap. Price tap. You get your long tool. My fault. You grab your short tool. You grab your short tool. You place your short tool. Right? Cover the whole entire zone. I do aggressive and conservative. Right? That's my thing. The next candle come in, I'm in the trade. All right. Once the next candle come in, I'm inside the trade. Right? Price broke structure. Price came back and tapped quickly. Then you take entry. Then I go for one-on-ones. I go for one-on-ones. Let's see. Boom. Pass my one-on-one. You could have took this down to 1 or 2. You could have took this down to 1 or 2. Easy. Boom. 1 or 2. But I go for one-on-ones and I scale in my one-on-ones. That's how I trade. I scale in my one-on-ones. So I could double my profits without even going to 1 or 2. But anyway, that's more advanced. I'm still learning that. So that's another video for another day. All right. This is supply in the next show. You wait for the break of structure. Price broke structure. You mark your zone. Wait for the tap. You take entry and bam. That is all. That is all. That's how you do supply and demand. Right? Price broke structure again. Right here. It broke structure. It broke structure again. Price broke this structure. Guess what you could do? You could draw another supply zone. You could draw another supply zone right here. And boom. Wait for price come up. If it do, you know what I'm saying? Take it back down. That is it, fam. That's how you draw your supply and demand zones. See, I got supply here. It broke structure. It broke structure. Supply zone. Let's find the root. Price came down. It broke this structure. Right here. It broke structure. And you form your supply zone. All right. And how I almost forgot how I draw my supply zones is from wick to wick of the previous candle. Right here. Right? I go by the previous candle. If it's going down supply, the bullish candle, the previous bullish candle going to be the beginning of your supply zone setup. From the top of the candle, from the wick, all the way down to the bottom of the candle. Wick to wick. Enjoy a demand zone. Alright, there's people who do it different ways, but this is how I do it. This is how I've been taught. Some people do body of the candle and the wick like this, but I don't do that. I go by wick to wick. Wick to wick. As you see here, wick to wick. Oh, I catch the bearish candle top wick also to make it look nice and neat, uniform. Boom. All right, that's how I do it. Some people, like I said, they draw like this from the body of both candles down to the next wick, but I don't do that. See, I see 2 wicks sticking out my zone. I don't like that. When I see 2 wicks sticking out my zone, it looked like a invalidated zone. So I do not do that. So I catch both wicks. Boom. That's my whole entire zone right there. That's my whole zone. Same thing with this one. Previous candle, bullish candle, wick to wick. That's it. Wick to wick. Wick to wick. Same thing right here. I do wick to wick. Boom. Catch this top wick and catch the bottom wick of the bullish candle. Like this. Boom. Same thing with this candle right here. Let me delete the zone. You can see it perfect. The top of this wick to the bottom of the wick of this bullish candle. Alright, that's how I draw my zones. This is how exactly I draw my zones. Let me leave. Let me shrink this up a bit. Alright, let's go to demand zone. Same thing. Almost forgot a crucial part of the video. How you draw your zones. Wick to wick of the bearish candle going up for demand. Alright. Demand zone going up. You connect the previous bearish candle wick to wick. Same thing. Demand zone going up, break structure, wick to wick from the bearish candle. Kind of like an engulfing candle. Kind of like engulfing. This is an engulfing candle right here. This candle engulfed this candle. So the candle that engulfing this, the small candle, is going to be the beginning of your marker to create your demand zone. From this bearish candle, wick to wick. You understand? Wick to wick. Alright. Let me give you a hard one now. So let's say price is going down to the downside, right? Let's say price is going down to the downside. Right here. Let's say price going down to the downside. Right? Price broke structure. Boom, price broke structure. How you gonna mark the supply zone? How you gonna mark the supply zone going down to the downside? That's how I would do it. I'll grab this top wick. I'll come all the way down. All the way down to the bottom of this bullish wick. And then I'll draw my supply zone. Just like this. This is a big zone. This is a very big zone. This is a very big zone. But this is how I will draw my supply zone. I tell you, I will skip the zone. I definitely will skip the zone. But this is how you will draw a supply zone. The top of this wick, all the way down to the bottom. I don't do it like this. From the body to the wick, because there's a wick sticking out my zone. I don't think it's invalidated. So I grab this top all the way down to the previous wick bottom. Alright, that's how I would do it. And it tapped and it going back down to the downside. Alright, that's how you draw, that's how I draw my supply demand zones. Wick to wick. That is all. That is all, folks, with this video. I hope I explained it perfectly in the best of my abilities. You know? But that's how you draw your demand zones, your supply demand zones. Not that hard. It's not that complicated. Not hard or complicated at all.
Y'all, this is the end of the video. How to create supply and demand zones. So hope you understand the video. Hope I made it easy for you. It's not that hard. Wait for the break of structure. Find a trend. Wait for the break of structure. Mark your zone. Wait for the tap and take entry. 4 steps. Follow the trend. Recognize the trend. Find your trend. Wait for the break of structure. Mark your zone. Wait for the tap and take entry. That is all for supply and demand. That is all. That is all. If you don't see the break of structure, do not mark a zone until you see the break of structure. Mark your zone. Wait for the tap. Wait the price come back and tap. Get entry. Get money. Back to the higher high or the lower low. All right. So hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next video. Subscribe, like, peace.